Welcome to the Asset Revolution podcast, where each week your hosts from Arbor Digital provide educational opportunities for financial advisors and individual investors to gain knowledge in this emerging powerhouse that is digital asset investing. The Asset Revolution podcast is your connection to the future of digital assets and an opportunity for anyone to get off zero. Let's dive in. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to the Asset Revolution podcast. I am so excited for today's conversation. I have a very special guest, Sara Johnson, who has a very intriguing and in-depth background, not just in crypto, but in the art world and as a lawyer and in many other different areas. And instead of me trying to go through all of that, I would love for you, Sara, to introduce yourself to the audience. And please, thank you for coming on to the show today.
Well, thank you, Marc, for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here. I love your program. So there you go. I just am searching and listening as of late. So before we get started, I have to do my, regular disclosures. Nothing that I will be sharing with you should be considered legal advice. We're just having a friendly conversation. I'm going to try to share as much as possible as of my experience and of my opinions. Also cannot be considered the opinion of my employer currently, which is BMO Private Wealth. And I want to acknowledge that I am sitting on the unceded territory of the Silix Okanagan people, so pay homage to their earth today. So yeah, let's get started. So something about me. So long story short, I can tell you that the common theme in my life is the perennial learner. Mm-hmm. I am a curious person, and I've been really studying for all my life, really. So I'm originally from Italy. I was born in Milan. I traveled quite extensively during my growing up. I have my first legal JD from the University of Milan, and then I did a master's in European business law with a specific outlook on banking and mergers and acquisition in Europe. That led me to get a position at the Dutch Central Bank just during that transition between the different European currencies and the euro currency. And I was exposed to a lot of that technical, brainstorming on how is it that we can introduce this new euro in the totality of what the European community that soon became the European Union was at that time. And so there was a lot of talk about digital assets, tokenization of currencies, virtual currencies, digital signatures, and how to make things safe from, a cybersecurity perspective and from a financial institution perspective. We weren't quite talking about DeFi at that time. That word was not coined yet, but we were thinking along those lines. How to make digital assets which are easily, copied and reproduce. How do you make them unique? How do you make them robust on the internet? And from there, then I moved to London, and then from London, I moved to Toronto, to Canada. And while I have been in Canada working for a wonderful private bank, BMO Private Banking, I also completed my studies and my PhD in behavioral economics and law. So it goes back to, and just recently, fast forward to 2021 and the pandemic, after I completed a master's in US law and I passed the bar exam in California, I actually got really into like the blockchain. Mm-hmm. And I've been studying and working on blockchain applications since 2015. I am part of the steering committee of the STEP, the Society for State and Trust Practitioner, on the digital asset side. I actually just got nominated as a co-deputy chair just last week.
Congratulations.
So yeah, that's the global group. So we actually really are looking after all the global initiatives for STEP digital assets. And it's a group of really interesting, bright people. But last summer, I took a course from the Rome Institute of Technology and Sustainability, Innovation and Sustainability. And my degree, my certificate in art and new technologies for art is actually on the blockchain. So I'm the, recipient of that beautiful blockchain certificate, that piece of code that has my graduation and my thesis in it.
Wow,
So
very cool.
yeah, so it's a lifelong, passion of mine, which is exploded in the last, I would say, 10 years.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for going into that illustrious background. I found it fitting when we were talking before, as we connected, and we connected through an organization called Planner DAO, which is a global decentralized group of financial professionals. I know just reading some of the things that you put on there, and then we started talking. It just seemed very fitting given your global experience and your depth of knowledge and expertise in many different areas. So having kind of a disciplined view and having all these different areas of which you've experienced, blockchain or digital assets, it was really interesting to me. And I know that our conversation today, what we're going to talk about is, really this intersection of estate planning and digital/virtual assets, or crypto, because there is a lot happening and a lot happening so fast. And there are just still simple things that we can do today. And, being that the audience that we have are more geared towards financial advisors and wealth managers, and a lot of times their end clients who will listen to these episodes as well. This is going to be a great episode where we dive into a lot of those dynamics. And what better fitting person than someone like yourself for a global asset class like digital assets? So enough from me. I would love to just start tapping into your genius right now. So talk a little bit about us. What have you been seeing with that art certificate you mentioned that's on the blockchain? What's been happening with this convergence of estate planning and digital assets?
Yes, that's a really important question. I wish we would talk about it every day. And I think being part of that DAO really, underscore the need for professionals like ourselves to really raise the bar of, okay, we need to reach out. We need to, tap into the minds of the experts, and really figure it out for our clients, because it is going to become a prevalent problem or a prevalent conversation that we're going to have with our clients. So what do I see? Well, I see the emergence of, this idea that we tend as human beings, and my clients are human beings for now, to underestimate problems and overestimate the ability of our heirs or our executors to be able to take care of it. And so there is this duality of issue that comes out that, we don't think it's important to plan, but the only real time that we have to plan is while we're alive. And unless we have this conversation with our professionals, then we're leaving, things untapped and issues, not uncovered. So why is it important? So I would say that we could start talking about digital assets, and then we can, migrate into the crypto and into the metaverse and into the NFTs. Because really, when we talk about our digital on life or footprint, we're really talking from anything from our emails, YouTube channels, our our air miles collecting, Starbucks cards that we have on our phone. And we're talking in two separate ways. We're talking about the actual digital devices, and then we're talking about the softwares and the more, intangible properties in there. So I might have a client that has a computer within which he has a manuscript on the cloud, and it's in the Apple iCloud. And so there are different layers of assets that are digital that now we have to deal with, like the actual hardware, and then the software, and then the cloud computing that goes with it. And not only we're dealing with it from a point of view of, there are many different aspects, like, okay, how do you access? How do you protect against cyber attacks? I mean, this is kind of like the daily news nowadays. But also an unwanted access. I might have a manuscript, but it might be my personal diary that I don't want anyone to read. So I actually want it to disappear when I die. Those are my secrets, right? And I do have clients that actually are really concerned about that, about the privacy. So it's not only just the actual access to the machine, but the access to the virtual side and to the content. Right? So there are different layers. And then the second aspect is, okay, now that you have access to it, if you do have access to it, what do you do with it? How do you transfer the assets? Who do you transfer it to? And so on and so forth. And each single digital assets might have abilities to be transferred or not. So, I have met a client that had, let's say few hundred thousands of dollars in iTunes music. And he's like a connoisseur, like, really rare, jazz concerts in there, beautiful rendition, some music that he himself had, uploaded and stored. So creates different problems, right? So on one side, he has a license, a limited license to listen to works of art that other people have made through the iTunes portal. And those things are lost. I mean, once he's done, when he's dead, you cannot transfer these licenses. It's your own personal license with the iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, he has his own uploaded music that he owns and he has copyrights on. And so now we have to decide, okay, how do we manage this and how do we manage that? And is it managed through one account and how do we separate them?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can actually plan for a succession on one side, but not for the other. So it's complex. It gets complex really, really fast.
Yeah.
And then we have, on the crypto side, so I like to talk about blockchain. So on the blockchain, on digital ledger side, then we have the issue of, you can have different assets within your digital ledger. You can even own apartments or, wineries on the metaverse. You can even have your own business footprinted, somewhere on decentralized land. But really what we have to plan for is those private keys. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of noise around all these amazing digital assets and digital collection that people have. But in reality, we need to kind of, listen, take all the notes. That's very important. Knowing and understanding, is there a financial value attached to these assets? Where are they located? But at the end of the day, it comes out to where's the private key? Mm-hmm. Because unless you have the private key, really getting into that ledger becomes impossible. The famous phrase, my keys, my coins, right? Not my key, not my coins. Yep, so that's absolutely. That's kind of where it boils down to. And the same thing for the smart contracts that you might have. They're in your wallet, right? Wallet. Mm-hmm. In your address, right? But in reality, so our estate planning efforts are really around, okay, there is definitely financial value for these assets. And so how do you separate the access and the safekeeping of the private key, without which all of this doesn't exist, really, because it's not accessible? And then what is the second step? How do we plan around how to really make a robust plan for those assets, which will grow up in value, right? With extreme volatility. Mm-hmm. So we have really nuanced and sophisticated conversation about all these different aspects. Like, okay, let's talk about your private key. Don't tell me where it is, but do you have an access code? Do you have an access guide? That treasure map that you have put together, or not? You don't have it yet. Okay, so do we need to put one, into force? And then who are the people that you're going to involve, in the management of the key, in the safekeeping and preservation of the key, and then in the management of the long-term assets that are related to that key. Mm-hmm. So there might be one person that does it all, which is rare, because it has to be a mix of like a guru, like a techie, and somebody that has a really long life. So it has to be young enough, but it has to be knowledgeable enough, and
mm-hmm.
So it's difficult. Or it has to be a team of people. And unless you have this conversation, and the conversation that I have really are like from the elementary, brilliant at the basics kind of thing. Like, okay, let's discover it. Mm-hmm. Do you have a list of those assets? And how do we access them, potentially? And what are their values, right? Mm-hmm. To who are the people that you need to engage now, today, for the future, for now and for the future? And mm-hmm. is there that plan of continuation?
Yeah. So let's take a step, because man, so much to unpack in all of that, because you mentioned a few different things. So what I'd like to hone in on before we dive into kind of those how to go into, or what you should be thinking about as you start engaging in those conversations. I think you mentioned a few things that could help a lot of wealth managers who may be struggling on bringing crypto or digital assets to the forefront of their conversations when they're doing their wealth review meetings or financial planning meetings, and the importance of why you should be proactive in bringing it up. And I think what you just said, if I heard you correctly, was there are so many things happening with digital assets and things that you may not have thought as digital that are digital, like your example of the manuscript on the Apple iCloud. That's a digital asset, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Or like, if you have other things that live in the cloud or live within some sort of centralized, data services that we all use today, like iCloud or Amazon Web Services. There are things that live digitally native that are important that you start weaving into these estate planning conversations. And then you then can start going into that conversation about, it's not as uncomfortable when, I actually do have already digital assets. I didn't think about it like that. And I think when we were talking before, that was one of those leaps that I made about, you know what? I talk about digital assets all the time, actually, when we talk about these things. Clients are storing more and more of their personal assets and things that they've created digitally. And the blockchain is just the next evolution of how that's happening. And you mentioned another thing where collectors, right? Wine collectors, I think has been fascinating to me to learn about. Collectors, you have to go abroad and you have to go global to get to the most exquisite and the most scarce types of wines, or ones, especially in those communities that are valued the most. And if you're based in the US or based somewhere that's very far from there, you actually don't have to be there. You can actually throw on your metaverse goggles or your VR goggles and take a walk through and see what you own that's on the blockchain. It's fascinating. And so we also have to protect those assets, right, that live on the blockchain that we've now gone through an NFT. So I guess, like, those things, are you seeing any other types of assets that are living digitally that maybe it would make, as wealth managers are saying, how do I even talk about this stuff? What else are you seeing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So let me tell you. So first of all, never ask your client if they have digital assets, because as you just pointed out, we don't know. Right? Yeah. We don't know what digital assets are. So if you go from the definition in the United States, we have the RUFADA, the model code. Digital assets is an electronic record. So anything that can be considered an electronic record, so an email, a website, a YouTube channel, anything that lives within a code or a binary expression, that's a digital asset. So I always tell my colleagues, my planners colleagues, don't ask that. Ask, do you have email? Have you participated to a Zoom funeral lately? Because people die and they couldn't go to actually, to the funeral. This pandemic has really, put everything on steroids. Yes. And there is this idea of participatory tech and ownership tech. So I can, my Zoom, my Instagram accounts, my TikTok accounts and stuff, my YouTube channel, those are participatory. So I'm creating something and I participate, and it's a two-way things, and we chat. But really, I don't own the Zoom, right? I don't own that room in that moment. And even, I might own my TikTok, recording, but it's uploaded to something else, to a platform, right?
That platform, yep.
And then there is an aspect of actual ownership. So there is participation, and then there is ownership, such as, I could have a digital native asset, like you very specifically recalled, or I could have a physical asset that have been tokenized. So that's the NFT side of things. So the NFT could have a real piece of art attached to it through that link, through the digital twin, so-called, which is the metadata. So the metadata can represent a physical thing or a digital native things. Now, what is it that you own with the NFT depends on what is the contract underlying. And the code is very simple. The NFT code is very simple. So what is it that you own with the NFT? Well, you just own the certificate that points to something. And that something could be the physical object or the digital object. Now you can go a layer beyond that, and it's like, okay, what do you own? Do you just own a limited personal license to access and view and maybe display around your house that object or that picture? or do you actually own that? So in the winery example that you just gave, which is super interesting, and there are different models here on BlockBar. So you can actually own the bottle of wine, the very special, whatever vintage, and they keep it safe, kept for you somewhere in a storage space. And then you own the NFT certificate that has a special utility attached. So not only represent the actual real bottle that you still own, but it's somewhere else. But it gives you, for example, access to VIP, either virtual or physical experiences, discounts on new purchasing, on new wine. So now your ownership is also diverse, right? Mm-hmm. Because now you own the physical thing, and then you own the utility against experiential, things that you could add onto that could lead either to purchase more stuff or just, make you happier. On the other hand, if you own a piece of land in the metaverse, for example, like, there is greenhouse law firm just opened up their own law firm footprint in decentralized land. So they're going to give actually, advice when through the avatars, you can just book an appointment, go for a virtual coffee and get virtual setting legal advice, right? Which is fantastic. This is great. I mean, this is where it's going, right? Because people maybe they are in the metaverse and they're looking at, buying something, and then they need legal advice on it. So there it is. It's right there. It's right in that same environment. So, but again, what is it that you buy are services. So it's consumption. It's a right consumption spending kind of transaction. And so can you really plan for that? No, right? You just, but it's an experience that you have in the metaverse, which could either decrease or increase your ledger amount of money that you have, right? Because you have to pay for those services, which increases or decreases the value of your assets. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is never ask if people have digital assets. Ask and give example of what this digital asset could be. From the simple thing, your email and your Zoom, to the really intricate, oh, you have art. Okay, what kind of art? Do you just have a PFP, like a picture for profile? Mm-hmm. Do you have a crypto punk, or do you have an ape? What is it that you have? Or do you have a collection? Do you, and what kind of collection? Do you own a fractional interest in something? So for example, Valentine just passed. The Belvedere Museum and Art Tech had come up with this idea of taking the Klimt kiss, the picture of it's a super famous picture mm-hmm. of Klimt, of the kiss, and they divided that picture in 10,000 fractional pieces that people could have bought and made a special message for the loved one, and sold an NFT to that picture. So that's fantastic. There is another museum that is actually selling old masters.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I want to stop there for a second, because you're highlighting one of the revolutionary aspects to what NFTs and non-fungible tokens of art represents, in this idea of fractionalization and scarcity, true scarcity, utilizing that technology. And that's a prime example of that, right? Like as an NFT collection, making that piece 10,000 pieces, and those are the only ones that'll ever be created, and attaching some utility to it, and being able to personalize that code that will live there forever. That's you. If I wanted to take a piece of artwork, I can't cut it up into 10,000 pieces and then take each of that. This technology allows you to do that, which is amazing. And then you can go and sell that fractionalized piece. You can go license it to other companies to then earn a staking or a yield or some sort of revenue stream off that in whatever token or whatever type of reward that, whatever the smart contract is written in the smart contract. I mean, it's revolutionary. And that I just wanted to highlight that, because you described it so well. And it's such a good use case. So thank you for that. But continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. That's exactly, no, that is exactly it. And you can do it with wine. You can do it with cars. There is a Ferrari now NFT that has come out there. You can do it with, you can do it with just the regular collectibles, your sports memorabilia. You can do it with a whole bunch of different stuff. And people are attracted to that. Now, the issue is, and I talk to a lot of people that are like, yeah, we want it. We want that NFT. We want to get into this. And then you're like, well, you understand that to get to that, you need crypto. And not only that, and I talk with a lot of artists that want to participate to the democratized, decentralized, non-intermediated, free marketplace, and they're like, okay, we want to make this NFT about something, right? But they don't realize, okay, well, you need cryptocurrency. And depending on your marketplace, depending on which platform you pick, and which protocol, so then you're really starting talking about the blockchain and what goes into it. What is the technology that is fundamentally the revolutionary piece about this all new marketplace. And the currency attached to it, and each of the currency have different volatility, a different protocol, proof of work, proof of stake, proof of history with Solana, which are totally different, right? And they're continuously evolving. They're evolving faster than, we can just have a conversation. I fear, I have entered into that fear of not knowing what's happening. Like it's just like I have to read the news before I go to bed, and then first thing in the morning, as if in 8 hours something has gonna start has changed. So yes, there are new ways of owning things. We participate to a DAO. There are new organizations for people to get together. They could have a governance piece attached to it. It could be not governed run, which leads to a more philosophical conversation about decentralization and the old ethos of non-centralized organization that are truly autonomous, and then different ownership types like fractions. I call it the mutual fund 2.10. Like the idea of having these pooled funds. There was a home in California that just came up for sale for $259 million. It's a huge castle, and a DAO was created so everybody could have a piece of that home. And it's a real estate. I don't know how many bedrooms. I think it was like 33,000 square feet, something like crazy, and it had like so many bedrooms. So then you would have to come up with an idea and an agreement. Okay, whose uses what when, which you can imagine, coming up with an idea of management of this real asset. But for a fraction of investment, you can have a fraction of ownership of a real asset. But now you own it through a certificate that is digital, right? So again, there is that dual side of things, that yes, it's physical, but it's also digital, right?
Yeah. No, and I think another example too is, the Denver Broncos is an American football team where a DAO has been created and trying to purchase the Denver Broncos. And so I think that, and then your example of this piece of this estate, this real estate that you mentioned, California, I think it's all tying into kind of why we're here and what we're talking about with this episode, which is estate planning is needed, right? These are a lot of these are going to be long-term assets that are meant to, travel generationally, right? And we need to make sure we're talking about this now and protecting, because these are very, very different than what we've been used to in terms of estate planning. And that's where, again, I would love to tap into your expertise here. And maybe let's start talking about what are some of the tips you would give to wealth managers that are starting to maybe engage, or maybe now that after listening to this, they'll start engaging and asking more of these questions about if they're participating in these types of DAOs or getting these types of assets. What are those maybe three tips of managing digital assets as part of, a robust estate plan?
Yeah. So the first thing, it's more due diligence. Like you have to create and you have to revamp your own engagement letter. So as a professional, first of all, you have to do some self-analysis. Like, can you speak about these assets? Are you comfortable within your skin? Because the issue is you don't have a choice. right? You don't have a choice. You can't choose not to ask the question. You actually have to ask the question because this asset may have huge values, right? So you cannot not ask the question for, personal malpractice liability.
Yeah,
So
fiduciary.
ask, right? Yeah, you're a fiduciary. So you have to ask. But how good are you? And can you have an intelligent conversation with your client? And we have to be extremely honest, because if you cannot, then you have to give yourself a way out of it and say, you know what, I can talk to you about XYZ. However, when we go and talk about digital assets, allow me to ask, so and so to come in, and they are going to be talking, or she's going to be talking about the digital assets, right? So that portion, I actually will manage it with my external advisor or with this referral or whatever. And I just need you to consent to that. Yeah. And so you are creating now a super strong, a super anti-fragile protocol for yourself, because now you are honest, right? And so do a self-analysis. Can you talk about it? And how far can you bring it? And do you have a way out? Right? That will say, okay, I brought you all the way from A to Z, or I brought you from A to C, and then the rest will ask Sara to take it on or whatever, right? So that needs to happen, and you need to have your client to give you informed consent, right? So that you're okay. So check mark on your letter of engagement. The second thing, you really have to be very good and extrapolate really good questions regarding those digital assets. So you have to come up with some kind of a set of questions that covers what, how they own it. So is the client owning a single name? Is it joint? Is it in a company? Is it in a holding company? Is it an SPV, in a special venture trust? Like how, what do they own and how do they own it? Yeah. Right? In a partnership, an LLC, or whatever it is. And then what is the value? And what you need to do is do not only what is value today, knowing what the asset is, but you have to kind of forecast what the present value in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, right? And that's really difficult, especially on highly volatile assets, right? So what you do, and then again, it goes back to your own knowledge. Do you have access to this research that will help you to come up with a valuation? Also, can you engage the right professional, the qualified professional? So there are qualified accountants, for example, now that all they do is valuing digital assets. Yep. There are not many, but you better partner up with the right people, right? That can do that. That can do that. Once you figure out what, and I would say that that's critical to figure out what the financial value is of those assets, because it will dictate what kind of planning are you going to do next. Right? Because you don't want to kill. I always use this example that my colleagues laugh about it, but you don't want to have a bazooka to kill a quail, because a quail, you might miss it, right? You might have a huge, hole in the ground, and then the quail is still alive somewhere, right? So you need to calibrate the type of estate solutions that you have as a professional and that you're really good at setting up and drafting to the problem. Right? Yep. You don't want to overplan, but you don't want to underplan. And I think the financial value and the financial conversation has a lot to do with that. And then you carry on with, what is it that you want to do with it? Who do you want to leave it to? Who are the heirs of this thing? And have you talked to them? Have you talked to them? Deloitte just came up with their biennial analysis on the art markets. It's a fantastic report, and 59% of art collectors wants to leave their art collection, either digital or physical, to their family, right? 59%. 51%, 53% of these people have never told them. So yes, the majority of people wants to leave it to the family, but the majority of people have never told their family their plan. So what is going to happen? That you're leaving yourself open to I don't want it, to a gift that actually gets refused, right? And then what? What is the plan B then? Should we leave it to a charity then? Who's the final, if the gift falls aside and lapses, like what happens, right? So you have to be able to push the envelope with your client and say, okay, you need to talk to your family. Are they happy? Are they comfortable? Do they have a wallet to receive this crypto, right? And do they know where their keys are and things like that?
Oh, thank you. See, this is why I'm so happy we got together today, because these are things that you may not be thinking about if you're, managing your client relationships and, their wealth plans. And we may not be considering, and especially if you're an advisor who hasn't taken that leap. And maybe if you're on the other side of the spectrum where, you know what, I don't believe in digital assets. I don't believe in blockchain based cryptographic assets that live there in a digital representation. It's just not part of our ethos. And like you said it before, we have a fiduciary obligation. And then what we know as professionals and what we see coming is this, this great, transition from, baby boomers, this wealth transfer that's occurring currently and will continue on for the next couple of decades. And then we got to think about also the next generation coming in. And you make up a great point where we have to start having the conversations now, because what if those generations that, and it can go both ways, right? If we are buying digital assets, our blockchain based assets, and our generations aren't equipped to handle those, and we'll kind of get into this idea of blockchain based assets being the most anti-fragile, and then the most fragile piece of it is the human side, which is another reason why robust estate planning is a necessity in this space. But we'll get there. It also goes to, what about those generations that did have those physical representations who said, I like the tangible, I love touching it. But the next generation, they're going to want to engage with those assets in a completely different way. And you want to make sure you're leaving these assets in the right way, in the right forms, like you just mentioned. So I love that you just brought that up. And those few tips just at the beginning are essential to making sure that you do those proper first steps. So I'd love to kind of use that as a segue then into, what are the most common solutions that you're seeing right now within estate planning that you're helping people with?
Yes. So again, it's tailor-made to the problem, right? What is it that we're dealing with? So I'll give you a couple of examples and then we'll look at it. Where should we put it?
Let's do it.
So let's say you have a couple of emails, you have some pictures on the cloud, and you have an online bank account that has or an online trading account, a self-directed kind of account. What kind of planning do you have to do for that? Well, the first thing that you need to do is have an inventory, an asset inventory. That is, I would say, the basic, and it cannot not be there. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need it to be part of the will per se, but the will, the estate plan, has to have some kind of a reference to it. Okay, so inventory, very important. And I'm talking about pen and paper. Mm-hmm. Very, very fragile, but you can have it online, you can have it, but I would say have a backup of it if you have it online, because you might not be able to access that online right away, right? Mm-hmm. So pen and paper, really what is it that you own? Make a list of all your assets. That's number one. Number two, if any of these assets, are a little bit more fragile. So for example, there is a private key attached to, a crypto or an NFT, then you have to have a second piece of paper or a second document, which is called the access guide. Mm-hmm. So one is the inventory and one is the access guide. Both these two documents, not part of the will. And there is a very specific reason why. A will goes through probate, which is a public process. You mm-hmm. do not want anyone to know
private keys in
what you have, right? Or anything around it. Like, yep. I would say, I have a lot of people that ask me, so do you own some crypto? And I would be like, even if I did, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Just by saying I have crypto, it's exposed to something, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody might be listening, right? So imagine having it in your will. No, you don't want it. You don't want it in your will. You want in your will that you have a separate memorandum.
Which is, again, a huge important. If you were working with someone who wasn't, as native to the space, who wouldn't understand that nuance of it, you might accidentally put that type of information that would then get discovered during that probate process, correct?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And anybody with $25 can get a copy of it, right? So no, no.
Okay. So if I just captured that, don't put the private keys or the access guide to those type of assets within the will.
No, don't do it. Okay. Now, what do you want to have in the will? So those two documents needs to be there, but it needs to be separate, right? What you want to have in the will, which is fundamental, is you need to establish an executor that is a digital executor. So somebody that can take care of those assets, that knows what those assets are, that is very strong in that environment. And Or if you don't have a digital executor, do you want to give powers to your normal executor, regular human being, to hire advisors that are tech savvy? Unless you specifically put it inside your will that those powers, or inside your trust that this person has these powers, he doesn't have it, right? The other thing that you want to specify very clearly and put it out there is that they actually do have access to those assets. They actually are interested in finding that access card and looking at those lists. You know, you give them power to access the hardware, the software, and the documents, right? The third thing that you want to do is specifically have a digital asset clause that is over comprehensive, in which you state who's going to get these assets, right? So don't put it as an hodgepodge, like a remainder. Have like specific beneficiary for those assets, that which could be the remainder beneficiary, but have it specifically set up before you divide the remainder, so that it doesn't go into the hodgepodge of the rest of the assets, right? And it will remind you, oh, I better have a conversation, and it will remind them, oh, I gotta be ready to receive these assets, right? I have to, if I don't have the wallet set up, I need to get my wallet set up and stuff like that, right? But I think it would divide, and it really, you know, very elegantly, now we have a part that is just for our digital assets within that will. The other thing, and I very seldomly see it in Canada, I've seen it a couple of times in the US, is that you even might want to have a prologue. So you even might want to have, okay, these are my digital assets part, you know, section 7 of my will, and have something in there in which you express the actual intent of the testator regarding with digital assets. You know, say something that make these digital assets important. You know, tell the story. You know, is he an OG? You know, is he one of the first people that was there, you know, in 2009? You know, say something about his beliefs or her beliefs, and how did he acquire the digital asset? What is the intention for the digital asset? Are they to be kept within the family? You know, is it that the executor should just gather them and sell them as quickly as possible? You know what I mean? Have a prologue with the intention, have a very strong design over what is it, you know, that in the administration of these assets that we should be, you know, looking forward to, so that you don't leave anything to a guesswork on that.
Wonderful. So those, again, there's a lot more nuances than I think just a person may think, oh, I can just approach this the traditional way that I approach, you know, doing my estate planning that I've traditionally done over the last, you know, 20, 30 years, and incorporating these assets that I'm comfortable incorporating. I could just apply the same dynamics here. But it sounds like there's a lot more that goes into it. There's these little nuances that are specific to digital assets. Here, going through those few things that you just did. So I know I'm learning a lot right now, and, you know, I'm happy we're recording this, because I'm going to have to go back and make sure we do this, because this is actually part of the value that we provide. You know, one of the things that we, you know, highlight when we're talking to other advisors who, you know, come to us for our investment portfolio offering that we have through a separately managed account. We say while we do have the portfolios and we have a team dedicated for that, we also dedicate time and energy to make sure we have those professionals, that team you were talking about, to where that are digitally native, right? CPAs that are digitally native, lawyers like yourself who are digitally native, who can make sure they understand the nuances of these new types of assets, because we all know that generationally, crypto or digital assets, blockchain-based assets, whatever you want to call them, investors are becoming engaged, and they're gonna the range of types of assets that they're going to own between security tokens, currencies like Bitcoin, or, you know, NFT-based projects like real estate, or the fine wine that we've talked about so much on here. It's going to range, and there are nuances to each of them. So if you're, I hope you're not listening to this and feeling a little intimidated. You shouldn't. What you should is just understand that these are the few things going in. So I guess, have you been seeing any other, when it comes to solutions, right? Are there any specific types of trusts or specific types of nuances within, you know, establishing specific types of trusts that you're seeing more commonly used in the digital asset space when it comes to digital assets?
Yes.
What are you seeing there?
Yes, absolutely. So when we go to the really high value, so now we're talking probably cryptocurrencies, NFTs, a collection, then we can do further planning, right? Now we're looking at, okay, open up the toolbox and scavenger some more. So there are more sophisticated planning tools. In Canada, not very much. We have a couple of trusts that we could use. There are some family trusts that you could use where you're alive, and some spousal trust or alter ego so-called trust, grantor trust. In the US, a lot more. For example, so you could have the so-called split interest trust.
Okay.
So anything that has basically multiple people benefiting from the assets. And those type of trusts, I would divide them in two categories. Either the long term, so you're looking really at estate planning for, for the longer term, like the dynastic type of trust, or for divesting yourself of these assets now, but you still want to manage them, right? So you have like the two types of the GRATs, the grantor annuity type of trust, which allows the grantor, so the owner of the assets, to slowly move out some of that growth potential of these super volatile assets to their beneficiary while they're still alive and while they're still retain some of the control over the pot, right? Because you only give away the growth of the assets. And that's beyond, the unified credit for the gift given. They really just pass the growth to the beneficiary, tax-free basically.
Yep.
And then you have the more dynastic ones, which for example are the CRATs, the charitable remainder unit trust.
Yep.
Whether you're now thinking, okay, well, I want to enjoy the income derived from these assets while I'm alive, right? From staking them, from trading them. But at the end, I want to actually give these assets to a charity. I want to pass it on. And at the end, I want myself and my family to, be happy with the income that we made while we're alive. But at the end of it, boom, we're putting it towards a share. That's why it's remainder, right? So, and it could be the opposite. It could be a charitable leading trust where you give up the income and then your family gets the final assets. So you keep the capital assets for your family and you're giving the income to the charity while you're alive. So there are different types of split interest trusts. And then there is the more vanilla things where it's really to benefit your family. So your SPAT, right? And it could be a testamentary, or it could be during your life. It could be I really love the beat it, because the beneficiary inheritance directed trust, where you actually divide you have your crypto. You decide, well, I have 3 kids, I'm gonna give some of the crypto to the 3 kids today, and it becomes in their trust, and they get to manage it, and they get to see how to manage and learn how to, with the help of a professional like yourself, how to get comfortable with this. And then when I pass, I give an extra gift at the end, right? So you can have multiple series of different trusts. Again, it all depends on what's your goal as the owner. Do you want to get rid of it right now? Do you want to get rid of it at death? Do you want to benefit somebody else than your family? Do you have any charitable inclination? Are you thinking that, okay, you have your, I'm going to say 250 Bitcoin that you somehow got, and they're now valued at and then you want to sell it, maybe you should transfer into a trust first and sell it within the trust, because there might be other tax and efficiencies to not actually, dispose of it personally, right?
Yep.
So there are different reasons and different tools that you can use depending on what's the goal, right? And really drilling down and understanding your client is the absolute key. We can be very sophisticated and we're super passionate. Talk to any, you were saying, digital native, talk to any planners that deals with this space. They love it. They're just not like it. They love it. They feel alive when they plan for digital assets, because they're intrigued by the technology and they want to keep on learning. But the thing is, we're really good at finding tax optimization or navigating the tax inexistent loops. There's very little tax guidance right now on how these assets are taxed or what you have to declare or decide. But we can navigate it. We can help the client. But that's not the end of it. That's the end of it. That's not the start. We have to start with the client. What do they want? And then we can help them with all these wonderful things that we can do. But it starts and ends with the client's best interest.
I love that you ended off with that, because it's so true. And everybody's different. Every family has a different situation, especially when you start getting into those multi-generational dynastic, situations where you're not just managing, a client for the next, 15, 20 years, you're managing 100 years plus, right? It's a very different thought process. And I think one thing that's very important, I hope comes across, is that a lot of crypto native younger investors who have, turned into those millionaires and, some of them billionaires, this is a whole new generation of clients that you can service. So especially, and this is all using traditional strategies, right? I appreciate you going into the different types of trust vehicles that could be beneficial regarding the many different types of situations, because it's no different than what we would do in the traditional wealth management space, right?
Yep.
And so this is a whole new client base that you have access to now. And rather than and I would encourage advisors listening who may be, I don't believe in this. This is a Ponzi scheme, whatever the case is, even if you don't believe in it. If you have a client or if you have somebody that's connected to an investor that's crypto native, you actually have the tools that can help them. And they don't know about these things because they're newer. They've amassed this wealth. And now you can come in and add value in ways that they didn't know that really that's truly what wealth managers and financial planners do. They're not just sitting there helping people pick stocks. That it's so much more to what we do and provide in services. And I guess one thing I would like to end off too with is, because one thing I see is that a lot of people make the misconception that you can only do estate planning if you have a certain amount of wealth. Like you shouldn't do it unless you're already wealthy. Is that the case with crypto assets, or do you think you should be doing this regardless of how much wealth you have?
Yeah, regardless, you need to do the
Okay.
planning.
Yeah.
Regardless, because as we started, you might have an email address. So I'll give you an example. It's a very simple example. A client of ours had an email address and an email account, and all the house bills and even his taxes and all the stuff all went through the email. The executor, the first thing he did, he canceled that email address. He couldn't find anything. He couldn't find anything. So but he canceled it because he's like, I don't want to deal with any of this digital stuff. Like, no, he phoned the company. It's like, here's the death certificate, close it down. And once he closed it down, we lost the intelligence. Like we lost everything that went through that account, which made us and the executors spend months and months in trying to figure out, because the client never received a statement. Everything was online, PDF online of everything. So we didn't know what he had, and he ended up that he had money invested in so many different places, in so many different, and he was actually a digital nomad, and we had to kind of work backwards. So a simple thing like that, like closing down an email account, was a nightmare. So yes, it doesn't matter how much you have, the only fact that you have it. And to talk to your point, about risk, you're right. We are risk managers. Lawyers always think about risk allocation, which is like away from us, right? We need to temper the risk. If you're not talking to your clients about their digital assets, if you're not helping, if you're not reaching out to your colleagues that know something about it, you are in a very risky position. And that's part of your anti-fragile protocol, right? We are our own most fragile link. We're the weakest link. We really need to really reflect, how do we help clients to manage that risk? And we cannot manage things that we cannot control, such as the volatility of the assets, but we can manage the structure of where we put that asset so that it doesn't matter if it's volatile, right? It's in the right structure. It's now, there is a castle with a moat and there are sharks with lasers, right? And we can do it. We can do it with our traditional vanilla tools, legal and accounting tools.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I can't now not help but think about Austin Powers. For those listening who may have made that same connection, I'm right there with you. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. That's a huge call to action. So I hope if you're listening to this, heed this advice. This is an important episode, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for more than a few weeks, and I'm very happy that we were able to have it. But to end off, please Sara, if you had those micro steps for anyone listening to this, a financial planner, a wealth manager, or any type of financial professional, or maybe even just an individual investor, what are maybe a couple of micro steps that you can give to our audience right now that they can do?
Yes. Create your network of trusted professionals. Find the people that you can trust, find the people that are in the know, find those natives, crypto natives, find the people that you can trust, because just trying to educate yourself is tough. Because I can tell you, every second article that I read on NFT is not correct. It's not correct. So, and it in the first 30 seconds, in the way that they talk about the art and the NFT as the art that they bought, that is wrong, right? So be very careful about what you read in the media. Be very astute and critical. Always question what you're reading, and really find the right connection, the right people, that group, that DAO, that network, that social media group that you can trust. And then don't be afraid, to take your professional to tasks. What is it that you have done for me to date that will cover these assets? Bring up the conversation. As an investor, as a client, I am expecting to be asked those questions. Raise the bar. And from a professional point of view, do a self-analysis, prepare yourself to have this conversation. If you don't like it, don't try to escort it. Find the right professional and find the right colleagues. Those are very intuitive things that I would say they're the basics.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you just heard it from Sara here first. Find those professionals, find that team, get with that community that it is native if you're struggling, and then, and stick to the basics. And we here at Arbor Digital, and I did not tee this up, by the way, I promise we didn't. Sara will back me up on that one. That's where, if you are curious or need more of those people, join Planner DAO. Get in touch with us, through Planner DAO, or, DM me, DM Sara, we'll help you get connected. I think one of the things I love about the space right now is that everyone's so willing to share and willing to make sure that we get to those actual good quality resources for education and for information, because there is so much out there and so much that's being thrown out there that, just like you just said, just isn't true. And that's where, we live in this space, but even we have our own network. And you're, thankfully, I'm so happy that we're a part, that you're a part of our network, and vice versa now as well. That you kind of need it right now in this space. It's just, it's to do it alone is very, very hard.
And it's not as fun.
Agreed with you there. This has been so fun, not just talking about all of the great value that we're hopefully adding to this, but it's been so fun to sit here with you, Sara, and tap into your genius, tap into what you've been doing. And I just wanted to give you a heartfelt thank you to all of the work you do, not just in blockchain and crypto and all of that, but all the value you add to your clients. Just hearing your stories, keep going, and just it's phenomenal to see all the great work that you're doing, and part of your firm as well.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been a tremendous pleasure. I hope we're raising awareness and we're making people happy about this space. Next time we'll have this conversation on the metaverse.
Yeah, next time in Decentraland, I promise. We'll have to join JP Morgan, those other companies that are getting in there.
Need to be sponsored.
Yeah. Well, real quick, where can people find you, Sara, if they want to get in touch with you and maybe engage with you and add some value?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So I connect a lot with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Sara Adami-Johnson. On LinkedIn, you can find me there. I think that's the best space. I'm on Twitter as well. But I mean, it's incredible. I'm on Discord, I'm on Twitter, I'm on the DAO. There's so much stuff out there. I think LinkedIn is the best, is the easiest. If I ask for a favor, just mention this program so that I know how to situate, and I know where the ask is coming from, so that I understand it's related to this conversation. I do participate to quite a number of fantastic programs, so it will help me to kind of own in to what we're talking about.
Wonderful. Well, so there you heard it. Connect with her on LinkedIn. We'll put that in the show notes as well, a link to where you can connect with Sara. Again, mention Arbor Digital Podcast, so that way we can filter through all of those. So again, Everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us all the way through. Sara, again, thank you so much for bringing your life, your energy to this podcast. We are so thankful and appreciative that having you here. We can't wait to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. And make sure to tell someone you care about them today. And we'll see you next time.
We appreciate you listening to this edition of the Asset Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Marc Nichols. Please don't forget to let us know how you like the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen. For more downloadable digital asset resources and educational opportunities, please visit us at arbordigital.io. We are here to help you get off zero safely and securely. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to tell someone you care about them. Cheers.
We are financial advisors. However, we are not your financial advisor. Unless you're under contract with or actively speaking with Arbor Capital Management or Arbor Digital, a division of Arbor Capital Management. This podcast is just that, a podcast. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice. If you have individual questions, please reach out.